I guess I got a call about 8 o'clock, and it was Hank's son-in-law and business partner, Victor Heidel. And he simply said that Hank passed last night. And I didn't know how to react. I got dressed as quickly as I could and got a ride over to their home. And it seems as though he just went to sleep. And when Mrs. Aaron tried to wake him up, she felt that he was cold. And that was that. You know, we're about the same age. I'm a little older. But he would have been 87 next week. And I'm 88. And so when you get this age, you don't worry about death, but you do think about it. But Hank had not even thought about it, I don't think. You have lawyers that plan your life, but he was always in good spirits. But like my problem is you get sleepy in the daytime and you stay awake at night.
Right.
And I think that's one of the most difficult things about getting older. And this virus period that keeps you homebound doesn't help.
Right.
Because normally he would have been running back and forth to his businesses or down to his home in Florida. And I don't know, you get tired. And when you get tired, you're likely to slip away. But there are very few professional athletes that live into their late 80s. I mean, as wonderful as sport is, it's rough on the human body and the human mind. And Hank had 2 knee replacements, a hip replacement, and I don't know. Life is never easy at any point, and it doesn't get easier when you get older.
When you went to the house, how's Mrs. Aaron doing?
Well, you know, they've been married for 47 years. And, of course, she did not expect it. None of us did. But you know not the day nor the hour when death comes creeping in the room. That's an old song. And there isn't a lot to say except that, in fact, I think you all in the news media, I'll wait for the line. I didn't shed a tear till I opened up the newspaper this morning. And you start reading and you realize that this is the end of an era. But we're already into the new era. And I think few people know how active he was politically. But President Clinton gives him the credit for being president because he held a rally over in Decatur with 25,000 people.
Oh my gosh.
And everybody thought that Georgia was impossible. This was back in the 90s. And he came to the rally, Clinton says, because Hank Aaron called him and invited him. And he won Georgia by 11,000 votes, and there were 25,000 people in those stands. And he always showed up at Hank Aaron's birthday parties because he said that Hank Aaron was the one that helped him to become president.
How do the kids say, game recognized game?
Yeah. But he and Mrs. Aaron have always been very politically active. She was a professor at Atlanta University before they married, and grew up in this town with Martin Luther King, and she helped all of us get elected because she was able to get a group of friends together, and they had a nice big house and a big backyard. And I remember when I was running, they had a big picnic out in the back, and it was a get out the vote fundraiser. And I probably wouldn't have been in Congress if it hadn't been for the Aarons.
Right.
And a lot of people like them. But that's the thing that the news media missed nationally. It's the thing that people in New York and Washington don't understand about Georgia. We have always been a reasonable, progressive state. And sometimes that shows up Republican and sometimes it shows up Democrat. When I came to Georgia in 1954, I was working for Eisenhower. I'd worked for Stevenson when I was in Connecticut, but in Georgia they said no, we're all Republicans down here, and if Eisenhower is elected, we get to have something to say about the appointment of judges. And I think Bilbo from Mississippi was on the Judiciary Committee, and he said if Stevenson wins, Bilbo gets to appoint the judges. So this has been a very sophisticated political state. In 1948, the Masons, Prince Hall Masons, brought Thurgood Marshall down here, who later became a Supreme Court justice, and they filed a suit in Columbus, the Primus King case, to end the Democratic white primary, because Democrats didn't want us before 1948. But many people were, Roosevelt used to come to South Georgia, to Warm Springs.
Sure.
and everybody loved Roosevelt. But after Roosevelt, we were nationally Democrat, but locally Republican. And I'm very proud of this entire state. And I mean, Democrats and Republicans stood fast for democracy. And that's what Hank Aaron's life was about. He did a lot for democracy with his baseball bat. You know, I can remember standing out in front of the American Hotel there on, it was Spring Street then, it's Ted Turner Boulevard now, when Hank came in with the Braves and they were riding down, and I was standing there with everybody around me seemed to be from out of town in the suburbs and the country. And I remember one of the guys who happened to be white saying, you know, if we're going to be a big league town, that guy needs to be able to buy a house any way he wants to buy it. And I was just amazed that Atlanta was ready to become a big league town. And Ivan Allen and Mills B. Lane sensed that and made it happen. And we have continued to grow ever since. Arthur Blank and others came in a little later on. Ted Turner took over the Braves from Turner Network Television. And I remember when you could only see wrestling and creature features and baseball.
I remember.
But he built a station that became CNN and helped change the world. And almost anything you think about that's happened in Atlanta since 1960s, you have to give Martin Luther King a lot of the credit for getting it started. But Hank Aaron and Bill Bartholomew and Ted Turner and now Arthur Blank and Tony forget Tony's last name. He's with the Hawks.
Oh, the new coach?
The owner.
Oh, the owner. I don't know. Pachinko?
No.
Not that guy.
But he brought not only did he buy the Hawks and build them into a growing, successful team, but he committed to transform the Gulch. And it's amazing how much our city has grown around sports. But that's the South. And Dr. King used to say that 11 o'clock in the morning might be the most segregated hour of the week. But 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the football fields and the baseball fields and the basketball courts are all integrated. And I think business and church and sports, and we've probably got, I don't know another city that has a better university system of colleges and universities. We've got to pump up our public schools a little more at the elementary grades. But
Do you think?
Hank Aaron was in the middle of all of that, and he and his wife Billy supported it financially. I mean, Hank is real. You know, we think about athletes making a whole lot of money. They didn't make a whole lot of money in baseball in Hank's days, but Hank has done more. He's given away more money through his businesses than he made in baseball, because there are more than 2,000 kids that he has almost adopted and paid their way through Chasing the Dream Foundation, so that they could chase their dreams as he chased his.
Yeah. Would you say he's past the 1960s? He's almost a cornerstone in Atlanta.
Well, Hank Aaron and professional sports have become the cornerstone. They took over from Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola brought us through the 40s and 50s and 60s, and we were branded, and then it all came, and I think it sort of led to the Olympics. And the building of all of these stadiums and things made us a prime candidate for the Olympics in 1996. And people knew who we were because they listened. In fact, the Braves were the first one labeled America's team,
right?
Even before Dallas tried to take the title.
Right. That's what was amazing to me as a kid, that people from outside of Atlanta that were also Braves fans. I was like, how do they know? And it's like, well, Turner sends them the footage, right?
That's
you know,
right.
They can watch it on every Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
What? Did you ever get to see him play?
I did. In fact, all of my children, older children, were away in school by that time. But my baby boy was just a few months old, but I dragged him out to the baseball park because I wanted him to know that, be able to say that I was there. And he never took an interest in baseball, but it skipped a generation, and it amazes me to see my grandson, who, when he was about 8 years old, came over to Mr. Aaron's house and asked him. He had seen the statue out there, and he asked him why he held his one hand on top of the other,
Right.
you know, to hit the ball.
Yep.
And they talked baseball, and Hank talked baseball with an 8-year-old like he was talking with one of the Braves hitters. And he loved the sport. He understood the sport. And the biggest thing that most athletes missed is if they came to Atlanta and didn't spend some time with Hank Aaron, their careers suffered from it. I was over at his house one day when Dusty Baker, as a 17-year-old, his mother brought him to town and brought him over to Hank and Billy's house. And she said, now, Henry, I want you to take care of my boy. I want you to teach him to be not only a good baseball player, but a good man. And he's been one of the best. He's still one of the better managers in the game.
People that were touched by Hank Aaron like that in their lives have to be more successful because of the interaction with him. Just that.
Well, that's true.
It rubs off on you.
It rubs off on you because is so natural. He's not telling you what to do. He's not. He's simply describing what he learned about the game and about life and how his experience might be able to help you.
Right.
He never told you what to do. He was always non-directive. Even he'd say, Andy, what are you going to do about such and such a thing? So, and I'd get to think it out with him. And actually, that's a perfect counselor or psychiatrist method. A non-directive, pulling your ideas out of you,
Yeah.
not trying to push his ideas into you.
Exactly.
And one of the reasons he made you better was he knew which buttons to push in your ego, in your sports.
He's coaxing it out of you.
Yeah, he brought it out,
Yeah.
and just, I never saw him angry, even when they were harassing him. It bothered him that it was so hard on his children.
Right.
But he never became angry or bitter about it. And one of the things I realized that all of us long livers in the movement, John Lewis and C.T. Vivian and Joe Lowry and Martin Luther King, didn't live that long, but Daddy King did. And and Hank Aaron, and one of the things we have in common is that none of us ever let any kind of segregation or racial injustice or insults make us angry. And Daddy King used to say, hate is too great a burden to bear. I will, no matter what anybody does to me. And his son and his wife, and 2 sons and his wife, had been killed. And he said, I refuse to embrace hatred of any human being. It's just too great a burden to bear. And I think that Mrs. Aaron said that he went to bed and was kind of restless, and she went to sleep, and when she woke up, he was asleep. And I guess when you have to go, there's probably no better way to go than to sleep on into glory.
Right.
And he's got a mother and a father and country cousins and sisters and family and friends, and Bill Bartholomew's just passed, and there's a team waiting for him in heaven. We just lost Don Sutton and Phil Necro.
Is Phil Necro up there pitching to Hank, and
Yeah,
Don Sutton's making the call?
Right. You know. But Dr. King used to say that the ultimate democracy is death. Everybody's got to die.
Wow.
And you have nothing to say about when you die, where you die, how you die. Your only choice is, what is it you give your life for? And Hank Aaron gave his life in service of God, his community, and anybody and everybody in need.
Do you think the things that he did after baseball weigh more than what he did during baseball?
Well, I think there's no question that he did more good through his business life than he was able to do in baseball. And I don't know how many thousand people he employs
Right.
in and around Atlanta,
Right.
but it's quite a few. And I know that he decided in his foundation to help 755 people chase their dreams. And he passed that long time ago, and it's well over 2,000 now. And when he says it was scholarships for kids who wanted to be doctors who had no money, I remember one of his proudest things was there was a quartet of harpists,
Random.
kids who wanted to study the harp.
Right.
And he got them tutors and harps, and a couple of them ended up going to Juilliard and studying music. And he just recently contributed a building at Morehouse Medical School in his wife's name. And so he was always thinking about what he could do for others. And that's a testimony of a great life.
His memory will be eternal here in Atlanta. What,
Now, some people, I understand that there's some young people who are trying to blame the fact that he got a shot for
right.
corona.
Right.
But he got one with me, with his wife,
Right.
with my wife, with...
It was a whole group.
There must have been a couple of hundred people that day, and there have been thousands since. And he never had any reaction.
Right.
I talked to the fellow who was his driver, and I said, was Hank feeling any discomfort or any problems the last few days? And he said no. He said he wanted to keep his schedule, and he said the only problem you old folk have is you doze off in the day and then you're not sleepy at night.
Right. Right.
And I plead guilty to that.
Right. Do you think when that news came out, does it bother you does it seem like people are trying to politicize him getting the shot like that? I mean, do you think it's...
No,
you don't think
I think it's a lot of young people who are very anxious about their own lives, see, and life is not easy, but I was taught, as Hank was taught, you embrace the good with the bad and learn from it. And he always tells the story of his mother calling him in out of the baseball field, saying, Henry, come on here, get in here, boy. And all of them would come in, and she'd say, get under the bed. And she'd put him under the bed, and she'd get out on the porch with her rocker, and the Ku Klux Klan was riding by on horseback. And said when they'd leave, she said, Henry, come on out. You can go on back and play ball now. But he took things like that in stride, and he didn't let anything intimidate him. He was fearless.
Definition of poise.
Yeah.
I mean, I had never heard those stories about the death threats until recently. And you never would have known.
No.
Even talking to him, you never would have
Well,
known those things.
I think one of the keys to a long life and a happy life is my daddy taught me at 4. He'd say, don't ever let anybody make you mad. He said, don't get mad, get smart. He said, when you get angry, the blood rushes from your head and you stop thinking and you do something stupid. And he said he was 5'4". And he said, you're never going to be more than 5'7" or 8. So you're not going to be able to beat up anybody. He said, but if you stay cool and calm, you can think with anybody. And your mind is the most important part of your life. And that's why you want to learn as much as you can, and you want to think as clearly and as calm as you can. And I think that those of us who survived the civil rights movement learned to walk through the valley of the shadow of death and fear no evil. Because we had a sense of a life beyond this life. We understood that we were not just physical beings, we were spiritual beings. And the spiritual reality of Henry Aaron will be a part of this city forever.
Are there any plans to honor him more with other statues? Have you talked to anybody about those kind of plans? Or is it too early? Let's just grieve.
No, I think that right now, all of us are just going through the motions of the things that you have to do when you lose a loving member of your family. But I think we will begin to appreciate him more now. And his impact on this country will continue.
I mean, that's a whole county of people that have been affected directly by him, and their lives are probably immensely better because of it.
Well, you know, I have a picture up there with him receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And there were 5 of us, not at the same time, but from different times and different presidents received the Presidential Medal of Freedom. But you know, all of them came from this neighborhood. Well, they all lived in this neighborhood.
That's awesome.
And John Lewis and C.T. Vivian, Joe Lowry and Hank Aaron, all within 8 or 10 blocks of here or less.
Is it in the water?
Hmm?
Is it in the water?
No, I think
Community?
no, I think it's in the. It is the spirit of Atlanta. And let's go ahead and be commercial and say we all grew up drinking Coca-Cola.
Right.
My mother, who lived also to 86, never drank a drop of alcohol, but she had 1 6-ounce Coca-Cola a day. And when they changed the formula, she was almost 80, and she wrote Coca-Cola Gazweta was just as the CEO. She wrote him a blistering letter about, dare you change this formula.
You know, my aunt sent the same letter, and she said, "What's next? Are you going to change the recipe for moon pies?" which as a kid I thought that was pretty funny.
It is.
What I liked, heard an interview with Chipper Jones talking about when Hank Aaron would come into the clubhouse and it would stop. People would come out just to watch him operate, just to watch him greet people and how he positioned himself, about how he operated.
Well, we used to sing a song in the civil rights movement. I love everybody in my heart. And it was as though Hank Aaron sang that song all the time, because even his adversaries and even people who talked about him and who he might have been a little perturbed with, he managed to find something good about them to relate to. And that's the key to a good life.
Yeah. Yeah. A lesson we can all learn.
Yeah. Well, the better you learn it, the longer you survive.
Yeah. Don't get mad.
Don't get mad, get smart.
Get smart. Right.
And
love everybody.
and with Hank, it came down to which part of the fence at Brave Stadium he would aim for. And I just heard him on television a few minutes ago saying that he changed his bat. Instead of holding it up high like Jackie Robinson, he held it lower because he could get a quicker swing and pull the ball more. And so there was no detail about this game of baseball that he didn't analyze, think through, and perfect.
He lived it.
Yeah.
He jumped right in, 120%.
And he got as excited and interested with my 8-year-old grandson as he would have with Dusty Baker coming in as a promising professional.
It didn't matter. It didn't matter to him.
And I've signed autographs, but the hardest thing for me to do with a pen is sign a name on a baseball. And yet Hank did it daily and never worried about the time, the money, or in fact, if you came in, didn't have a baseball, and said, I wish I had a baseball for you to sign, he'd say, see if we got any balls over there in that closet.
I mean,
and he'd get a ball and sign it and give it to him.
I'm adding another word. It's selfless. Completely
Totally
selfless. Lessons we can all learn for sure. I don't want to keep you too long. I could talk about this for days.
It's what it means to be a classy human being. Has nothing to do with his sports ability, though it came from that, or his race, or his creed, but it was his spirit. And I think that spirit doesn't leave us. And we've learned that from Martin Luther King and John Lewis, that their bodies are inactive, but it's 53 years since Dr. King's assassination, and we're still, you cannot turn on the television station, any station, for a day and not hear some mention of Martin Luther King. And you won't be able to think about sports. Or when you talk about good men and great men, good citizens, good Christians, loving, husbands and family men, you got to think about Hank Aaron.
We'll continue to learn from
We
Hank
will.
Aaron until
Well,
we go away.
I know. I think of course, we're learning too much here lately, too quickly, but it is the end of a time and a beginning of a new time. So Hank Aaron helped to shape this new time. And just like he helped to elect Bill Clinton, he helped to elect Warnock and Ossoff
Yeah.
and Stacey Abrams, who behind the scenes helped did the voter registration. I remember going to a fundraiser at Hank's house for Stacey, and I probably couldn't have been mayor without he and Billy's support. That was way back in, what, 81. So he's got a reward in glory.
Many crowns.